So first and foremost, I have to give some serious accolades to those who came before me, not only because you're incredibly inspiring, but this is horrifying. It's a lot easier to give this speech in my bathtub than it will be for this, but bear with me. For a minute, I want you all to imagine that you're a member of the United States Congress, a job that most of you probably wouldn't take in a million years. But imagine for a second that across the desk from you is a small woman, maybe 4 feet tall, who's been fighting for the last 2 years for freedom, for equality from her government. And not fighting in the traditional sense. She's never thrown so much as a punch. All she's asking for is the same opportunity for jobs, the same rights as the people that she goes grocery shopping with. Imagine that this story is so compelling. You see the calluses on her hands. You feel her heartbreak. You see tears in her eyes, and you can't help but have tears in yours. You feel this incredibly overwhelming sense of empathy. The idea behind this is that ideally, empathy turns into policy. And I agree, that's an idealistic way to look at things. Where I work at the Project on Middle East Democracy in Washington, D.C., we do this all the time. We bring activists from the region to meet directly with policymakers. We are a small, nonpartisan nonprofit that works to examine how genuine democracy can develop in the Middle East and how the U.S. can best support that process. There's no secret that there's a disconnect between U.S. policymakers and the people that their policy impacts. It seems strange to me that someone can make a decision about waging war or cutting aid without so much as having a conversation with someone from that country. The influence of the United States is tremendous, whether we like it or not. But what we want to do as an organization, as an individual, is to take that influence and use it in a positive way. We think that this tremendous influence can be shifted, can be changed, and can be used to do positive and amazing things. Now, it's pretty clear to me that this isn't an easy suggestion. Speaking to policymakers is an aversion to many of the people in this room, many of the people that I work with. However, here's the big difference about what we want to do. We want to take Congress members and put them in context. We want to give them and let them recognize the nuance of countries that they don't really understand. Countries that even I struggle to understand, and I work on it every single day. We want to give them the same feeling that I got when I walked through the streets of Cairo and met the street vendor just trying to sell vegetables. We want that empathy. We want to match that empathy that I felt and the reason that I devoted my life to this and make that reflected in their policy. Now, we do this because we have an incredibly strong network of activists, some of the boldest, bravest, most brilliant activists you could ever imagine in the region. We work with them all the time, and I'm constantly inspired. We want to plug members of Congress and their staff into that network. We want to show them that there are people working and living and breathing this, and that the policies that you make have a huge impact on what they do. And we want them to see that firsthand. Now, there's a reason that this is important beyond just the influence. Many of you in this room are working on projects, and you need space. You need cooperation, or at least not interference from your government. And that's what this is aiming to do. Who knows? You know, since Gaddafi fell, John McCain's been to Libya 3 times. And most of you probably didn't know that. They're not very well publicized. And I'm not saying that that's all that needs to happen, but a lot of times when these congressional delegations or staff delegations go to countries, the host government has a huge influence on who they see. They roll out the red carpet, they have a nice dinner, meet with the foreign minister, and they think they can go home and make impactful policies. I tend to disagree. So, as I was saying, this makes space for people like you in this room, anyone who sees this speech, to do the things that you want to do. American influence is big, and who knows that maybe the next statement from a congressman can prevent that opposition newspaper from being shut down, or get that Twitter activist out of jail for just sending a tweet, or even hasten electoral reform in a country where, man, they really need some transparent elections. When we were being coached on how to give these speeches, they said, be confident. You know your issue better than anyone in this room. And I hope they're right. But what I don't know is if this project is going to succeed. But I'm sure as hell going to try. If these conversations aren't started, if I'm not the one that starts these conversations and my organization isn't the one behind these conversations, then we shouldn't be surprised when the conversations never happen. There's too much at stake to say that these people are corrupt, that they're lazy, that they're just here for a paycheck. That may all be true, but all it takes is one person. All it takes is one champion to change some of these issues. I'm not saying it's going to change overnight. I'm not saying it's going to change the world. And what I would challenge some of you to do, anyone that's in a position to do so, sit down with your policymakers. It doesn't matter what you do, what your issue is, find the person that can be your champion. And I agree that this will evoke a visceral reaction for some of you that see this. And that's okay. You might be right that there's no hope in policymakers. But if we don't start these conversations, if we don't try to hold our officials accountable, and we don't tell them what they're doing right, and maybe even occasionally tell them the few things that they've done wrong. We need to balance what they've done right and what they've done wrong, encourage them to do the small things that they've done right, and keep doing them. Do them better, do them bigger. So imagine, maybe if you sit down with those policymakers, maybe you look them in the eye, you start tearing up, and maybe they do too. And maybe, just maybe, you find those tears in those eyes, that empathy that they feel, the pain that they share with you, that can be reflected into policy. Thank you.